More than 100 people vanished without a battle, without a warning, and without leaving behind a single body. No signs of violence, no desperate messages.
No graves, no survivors.
Just an abandoned settlement standing in silence, as if its people had simply stepped away and never returned. For over 400 years, historians, archaeologists, and explorers have searched for answers. Did they starve? Were they killed? Did they join another community? Or did something happen that history has completely forgotten? What makes this mystery so unsettling is not what was found. It's what wasn't. Because when rescuers finally arrived, an entire colony had disappeared without a trace. And the only clue left behind was a single word carved into wood. A word that may hold the answer to one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Imagine sailing across the Atlantic Ocean to start a new life. The journey is dangerous. The land is unfamiliar. Supplies are limited, but hope is strong. You believe you are helping build the future. A permanent English settlement in a distant world. Families arrive carrying dreams of prosperity. Children play among newly built homes. Farmers prepare fields. Leaders plan for the years ahead. Everything seems difficult but possible. Then something happens. Years later, when help finally arrives, every person is gone. The houses are empty. The streets are silent. The settlement has become a ghost town. There are no signs of panic, no signs of battle, no signs of where anyone went. It is as though the colony has been erased from history, and that mystery would become known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. But before the disappearance, there were warning signs that something was already going wrong. Signs that few people noticed until it was too late. So how did this story begin? Long before the mystery unfolded, England dreamed of expanding its influence across the Atlantic. European powers were competing for territory, wealth, and resources in lands they barely understood. Explorers returned with stories of vast forests, fertile soil, and opportunities beyond imagination. To many leaders, the future seemed clear. Permanent settlements would strengthen England's position and create new opportunities for trade and expansion. Roanoke Island, located along the coast of present-day North Carolina, appeared to be a promising location. It was isolated enough to provide protection but close enough to valuable waterways. Early expeditions explored the region and reported favorable conditions. The reports created excitement back in England. A successful colony could change everything. But there was a problem. The region was already home to Native American communities with their own territories, alliances, and rivalries. Any new settlement would need to survive not only the challenges of nature, but also the complex relationships between different groups living in the area. At first, some interactions were friendly. Others were tense. Misunderstandings began to grow. Small conflicts emerged. Trust became fragile. These early tensions would later become an important piece of the mystery. Because when people eventually started searching for answers, many wondered whether those strained relationships had something to do with the colony's fate. But the settlers were still hopeful. They believed they could build a future on Roanoke. They had no idea they were walking into one of history's greatest mysteries. In 1587, a group of settlers arrived with a mission unlike earlier expeditions. This time, they were not simply exploring. They intended to stay. The colony included men, women, and children. That detail is important. This was not a military outpost. It was a community. Families crossed an ocean to build new lives. Among them was a governor named John White. He carried enormous responsibility. His task was to guide the settlement through the difficult early years. The challenges appeared immediately. Supplies were limited. The environment was unfamiliar. Food shortages threatened survival. Relations with nearby Native American groups remained uncertain. Every day required careful decisions. Yet despite these obstacles, life continued. Homes were built. Plans were made. The settlers believed they could overcome the hardships. Then a child was born. A girl named Virginia Dare. She became famous for a remarkable reason. She was the first English child born in the New World. To many people, her birth symbolized hope, a sign that the colony's future was beginning. But while hope was growing, so were the colony's problems. Resources were running low. The settlers desperately needed additional supplies. And soon, a decision would be made that changed everything. A decision that may have sealed the colony's fate. As conditions worsened, the settlers urged John White to return to England and gather more supplies. The request was risky. The colony needed leadership, but without food and equipment, survival seemed impossible. White agreed. He planned to leave temporarily and return quickly. Before departing, arrangements were made. If the settlers needed to relocate, they would leave a message indicating where they had gone. If they were forced to leave under danger or attack, they were instructed to carve a cross alongside the message. It was a simple system, a way to communicate across time. Then White sailed away. He expected to return soon. But fate intervened. England became involved in growing tensions with Spain. Ships and resources were redirected. Travel became difficult. Months turned into years. White remained stranded in England, unable to reach the colony. Imagine his frustration. Every day brought uncertainty. His daughter remained in Roanoke. His granddaughter, Virginia Dare, was there too. He had no way of knowing whether they were alive. As years passed, the situation became increasingly alarming. The colony had limited supplies, no support, no communication,
No rescue.
yet no one knew what was happening across the ocean. Were the settlers surviving? Were they struggling? Or had disaster already struck? When White finally received the chance to return, he rushed to sea. He hoped to reunite with his family. Instead, he was about to encounter something far more disturbing. 3 years after leaving the colony, John White finally returned to Roanoke. The journey had been delayed far longer than anyone expected. As his ship approached the island, he searched the shoreline. Perhaps he expected celebrations. Perhaps he expected signs of life. Instead, he saw silence. The settlement appeared abandoned. White and his crew went ashore. The scene was strange. Buildings had been dismantled. Structures were gone. Yet there were no signs of violence. No burned homes. No scattered weapons.
No bodies. No graves.
The settlers had vanished. Then White discovered something. A word carved into a wooden post. CROATOAN. Nearby, another clue appeared. The letters CRO. Nothing more.
No explanation.
No details. Just a word. At first glance, it seemed promising. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island and the people who lived there. Maybe the settlers had simply relocated. Maybe they were safe. Then White noticed something critical. There was no cross. Remember the agreement. If the settlers had left under threat, they were supposed to carve a cross. No cross was present. That suggested they had moved voluntarily. But if they had moved willingly, why weren't they there? Why had no one heard from them? And why did they disappear so completely? The answers seemed close, yet somehow remained out of reach. And soon, bad weather would make the search even harder. White desperately wanted to investigate CROATOAN Island. The carved word appeared to point directly toward an answer. But the weather turned dangerous. Storms threatened the ships. Conditions worsened rapidly. The crew refused to continue. Reluctantly, White abandoned the search. It was a heartbreaking moment. The clue was there. The destination seemed obvious. Yet he could not reach it. He never saw his family again. And he never learned what happened to the settlers. Over time, opportunities to continue the search faded. Years passed. Evidence disappeared. Memories changed. Witnesses died. The mystery deepened. Future explorers searched the region. Historians examined records. Archaeologists investigated possible sites. Yet definitive proof remained frustratingly absent. Every discovery seemed to answer one question while creating another. The farther researchers looked, the more complicated the mystery became. And then they started uncovering clues that suggested the colonists may not have vanished as completely as everyone believed. The word CROATOAN remains the most famous clue, but it is not the only one. Over the centuries, researchers have uncovered hints that the colonists may have survived for some time after leaving Roanoke. Reports emerged describing Native American communities with unusual features. Some accounts mention people with lighter skin or European characteristics. Others described communities that possessed objects linked to English settlers. Could these be signs that survivors joined local groups? Perhaps, but evidence remains debated. Another intriguing clue comes from maps created by John White himself. Modern analysis revealed hidden markings beneath portions of one map. Some researchers believe these markings indicate a possible fort or relocation site inland. If true, the settlers may have moved away from Roanoke before disappearing from the historical record. Archaeological discoveries have added further intrigue. Fragments of English pottery, metal tools, weapons, household items. These artifacts have appeared in locations beyond Roanoke Island. Each discovery raises new possibilities. Did the colonists spread into different communities? Did separate groups travel in different directions? Could there have been multiple outcomes rather than one single event? The evidence refuses to tell a simple story, and that uncertainty has allowed countless theories to flourish. Some seem plausible, others sound almost unbelievable, yet each attempts to answer the same haunting question. Where did the colonists go? This is often considered the strongest theory. The carved word points directly toward the Croatoan people. Historical accounts suggest relations between the settlers and the Croatoans were relatively friendly compared to some other groups. The colonists were facing shortages. Relocation may have been necessary. Joining an established community would have increased their chances of survival. Over time, settlers could have blended into local populations. Languages would change. Cultures would merge. Generations would pass. Eventually, their separate identity might disappear entirely. This theory explains several mysteries. It explains the lack of violence. It explains the carved message. It explains why no bodies were found. But if this theory is correct, why is there no definitive proof? That question remains unanswered. Some researchers believe the settlers relocated inland to establish a new settlement. Life on Roanoke Island was difficult. Food shortages were common. An inland location may have offered better resources and protection. Artifacts discovered away from Roanoke support this possibility. The hidden map markings also add weight to the theory. Perhaps the colony moved. Perhaps they survived for years. Then disease, conflict, or hardship eventually destroyed the settlement. If so, evidence may still be waiting underground, lost beneath centuries of soil and vegetation. But where exactly would that settlement have been? No one knows for certain. Another possibility is that the colonists encountered hostile groups. Competition over resources can create dangerous situations. Misunderstandings can escalate. Tensions already existed in parts of the region. Some historians suggest the settlers may have been attacked after relocating. If violence occurred elsewhere, it would explain why no evidence appeared at Roanoke itself. Yet there is a problem. The settlement showed no signs of struggle, no defensive damage, no obvious evidence of battle. The theory remains possible, but the lack of physical proof makes it difficult to confirm. The simplest explanation is often the hardest to accept. The settlers may have faced overwhelming environmental challenges, food shortages, disease, harsh conditions, limited supplies. Perhaps they attempted to relocate and gradually perished. History contains many examples of settlements failing under similar circumstances. Yet this theory struggles to explain the complete disappearance of evidence. Where are the graves? Where are the remains? Why did so few traces survive? The mystery persists. Some modern researchers believe there was no single fate. Instead, different groups may have taken different paths. One group could have joined Native American communities. Another may have traveled inland. Others may have died from disease or conflict. This theory reflects the complexity of survival. People facing crisis rarely make identical decisions. Families separate. Groups divide. Choices differ. If the colony fragmented, that would explain why evidence appears scattered across multiple locations. It would also explain why the mystery has been so difficult to solve. Perhaps historians have been searching for one answer when several answers exist. After centuries of investigation, many historians lean toward a combination of theories rather than a single dramatic event. The evidence suggests the settlers probably did not vanish overnight. There is no sign of sudden destruction, no indication of a massive battle, no evidence of a catastrophic attack. Instead, the clues point toward movement, adaptation, survival. The carved word CROATOAN appears intentional. It seems designed to communicate information. The absence of a distress cross suggests the settlers were not acting under immediate threat. Faced with shortages and isolation, relocation would have been logical. Some settlers may have joined the CROATOAN people. Others may have traveled elsewhere. Over time, their descendants could have become part of existing communities, their English identity gradually fading into history. Ironically, the colony may not have vanished at all. People may have survived. What disappeared was the record of what happened next. And that distinction changes everything. Because if the settlers lived on, then the mystery is not about death. It is about transformation. A transformation history failed to document. Yet despite all the evidence, certainty remains impossible. The final answer continues to hide just beyond reach. And perhaps that is why the story still captivates us today. The Lost Colony of Roanoke is more than a historical puzzle. It is a reminder of how easily entire chapters of human lives can disappear. More than 100 people crossed an ocean filled with danger and uncertainty. They carried hopes, fears, dreams, and plans for the future. They built homes, raised families, imagined generations yet to come. Then history lost track of them, not because they were unimportant, but because the evidence simply faded away. The forests grew, the years passed, the witnesses disappeared, and the truth slipped into the shadows. Today, archaeologists continue searching. Historians continue debating. New clues still emerge from the ground, from forgotten records, and from careful analysis of the past. Perhaps one day a discovery will finally reveal what happened. Perhaps the settlers were absorbed into another community. Perhaps they moved inland and built a new life. Perhaps the colony split apart, with different families meeting different fates. Or perhaps the full truth disappeared with them forever. More than 4 centuries later, the abandoned settlement still whispers a question across time. A question carried by the wind through empty forests and silent shores. A question that no one has been able to answer completely. What really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Or perhaps the truth disappeared with them forever. More than 4 centuries later, one question remains. What do you think happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Comment your theory below. If you enjoy mysterious historical stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss the next mystery.